ask ourselves frequently the question, is there another way that I can approach this? Fill in the blank for this with any issue, problem, challenge, opportunity, goal that you have. And then ask yourself about that. Is there another way for me to approach it? The truth is, there is another way to approach it. Oftentimes, though, we get our minds going in just one direction, repeating the same thoughts or the same approaches we've used many, many times over. It takes some practice to remind oneself that there's many different ways to approach the situations we find ourselves in. There's not just one way. There's not just a right way. There are many different ways. When the beautiful city of St. Petersburg was first being laid out in the 18th century, the city fathers wanted to lay it out in this beautiful grand scale with wide sweeping boulevards. And as they laid out the design for this beautiful city, they found that they had a problem. Right in the center of one of the main avenues that they wanted to create was an enormous boulder that had been brought down from Finland during the Ice Ages. And the challenge was, this is before the days of explosives or heavy machinery, how do you get this boulder out of the way so you can lay out this beautiful boulevard? And so the city fathers put this project out to bid. And most all of the estimates that came in were very, very, very expensive. Because there wasn't explosives, there wasn't heavy machinery. The answers all seemed to rely upon thousands of able-bodied men to be able to push or pull this boulder out of the way, one side of the boulevard to be, or the other side. Well, things haven't changed a whole lot. Now to then, the job went to the lowest bidder, which was a peasant, who showed up the next day with himself and a few friends, co-workers if you will, a few other peasants, with very minimal tools only a few pieces of timbers and shovels. And they went to work to move that boulder in the most creative way. Whereas everybody else only approached it from a lateral point of view, a horizontal point of view. They got in front of the boulder, metaphor right there, got in front of it and dug the deepest, biggest ditch, bigger than the size of the boulder, and then they were able, through physics and leverage, to use the timbers to force that enormous boulder to fall into the hole they created, and then they just did away with the dirt that was remaining. A completely different approach, right? Everybody else saw it in a very linear fashion, a very typical fashion, a very literal fashion, a very simplistic fashion, that you have a boulder that's right in the middle of the area that you want to put a road, where you have to move it from one side to the other side. How many of you can relate to that kind of thinking? It's top of mind thinking, right? But here comes someone, a peasant, who you might suspect would not be as smart as these others, and yet very smart in recognizing there's another way to approach this. There's not just side to side, there's up and down. We need to pause much more often than we do in our lives, especially when we are facing a decision, a challenge, or an opportunity. To pause and ask ourselves, what's really at work here? What's the best way for me to approach this situation? Am I thinking of all the different possibilities? To challenge ourselves to go into prayer around that. Dear sweet Spirit, however you pray, dear sweet Spirit, Mother, Father, God, open my mind that I might capture new and different ideas, new and different approaches to handling, overcoming, moving around, moving over, moving under, moving through, whatever it is that's before me.